Before my first amateur MMA fight, I had 19 Muay Thai fights altogether, 13 of them being professional. And here's what I learned from my amateur MMA debut. What is going on, guys? It is Dylan the Machete here, and today we're going to be speaking about my amateur MMA debut, the lessons that I learned, the differences between Muay Thai and MMA, and the things that you got to consider if you're transitioning yourself. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about the first thing, which is not the most obvious. So the striking in MMA is actually a fair bit different, and I didn't really think about the big differences until I started training MMA. So little things, obviously the gloves are a lot smaller, so you can't just kind of stand there and guard up. I don't really have a stand there and guard up style anyway, so I've got a bit more of a movement and a bit more of a kind of parrying and in and out style, and I like to be a pressure fighter, so I didn't have to change too much when it came to my striking. I did have to move a lot more, but when it comes to those little gloves, obviously you can get hit if you're just guarding up. Footwork, so you can't just be standing in front of someone, you can't just be standing and unloading combos unless you got someone seriously rocked, because then they're not going to be able to just shoot takedowns stupidly on you. You got to use a lot more fakes, whereas in Muay Thai you don't really use a whole lot of fakes. You use some fakes, but in MMA faking is a big thing. You got to be able to fake more, so not a whole lot of Muay Thai fighters know how to fake properly, and I think this has actually improved my Muay Thai game a lot by doing the MMA and then learning how to fake properly. Also, you can't be throwing just like naked kicks and naked knees out there, because chances are if you got someone that is a decent wrestler or they know wrestling in any form, they're just going to grab that leg and take you down. But the big elephant in the room is obviously worrying about the takedown. So this is always going to be in the back of your head if you're a striker and you're coming over to MMA. You got to think about the takedown. But I've been told by other fighters that this kind of just comes with experience, and the more fights you have in MMA, the more like kind of comfortable you are to standing in front of someone. My wrestling's gotten a lot better since I had the fight. So now I think I'd be a bit more comfortable just kind of standing there in front of someone. But overall, I think this MMA fight definitely did improve my Muay Thai when it came to my striking, just because I learned a different aspect, and now I can bring certain aspects into my Muay Thai without completely changing my Thai style. The second thing I learned is you got to not neglect what you're good at. So I've done a fair bit of grappling in Australia, not heaps, not as much as I've done Muay Thai, but I've done a little bit here and there. But being at Bangtail Muay Thai and MMA, I really wanted to get a lot of work in with the Hickmans leading up to the fight. So I was doing like 4 to 5 hours of grappling a day. So I might get there at like 9 a.m., do some grappling, then I might do the 10 a.m. no-gi class, and then I might eat, go home, rest. 3:30 I'd come do some warm-up drills with a friend, then you do the hour and a half of wrestling, and then I'd probably do a little bit afterwards. So I was constantly grappling, and I kind of neglected my striking. I was obviously doing my striking, my MMA sparring and all that, but I didn't hit pads once leading up to the fight because I was just so focused, because I was meant to be fighting a wrestler, and then last minute got changed for a striker. But yeah, I focused so much on the grappling that I feel like if I focused a little bit more on my striking, my shots would have had a little bit of extra oomph behind them. I probably would have been a little bit smarter when it comes to my striking. I did very well in the fight, and I clearly won the fight. I think just doing more pad work, and that would have definitely helped my performance, and also just managing the loads better. So because I was doing so much grappling, like my body was just tired, and I felt like in the back of my head, I'm just like, oh, grappling's easy. Muay Thai is a lot harder on the body, because at the end of the day, I just think that's true. I was like, grappling's easy, so I didn't really take as much rest as I should have. So to manage your loads and don't neglect what you're good at, those are two things that I would definitely say I learned from the fight. Another thing I learned is that clinching for Muay Thai is a great base for wrestling, but you need to know the differences. So what do I mean by this? So any Muay Thai fighter that goes over to MMA that has a decent clinch, they're going to be good at wrestling. But there are little things, say for example, if you have your hips out in Muay Thai clinch, that's not good because you can get kneed. If you have your hips out in wrestling, it's good because you can't get body locked. Body locks and all that, they're illegal in Muay Thai. So little things like that, you got to learn like about overhooks and underhooks and whizzes and all these things. Like there's so much more things that you need to worry about in MMA when it comes to the wrestling, but it is a different thing. There's just like little basics that you need to learn, like how to frame the head, when to explode, when not to explode. So all these things, they kind of come into play in wrestling, but there are also a lot of differences. So you need to kind of sit there and figure out the differences. And if you are fighting both, if you're fighting Muay Thai and MMA, I wouldn't suggest taking a Muay Thai fight and an MMA fight within a month of each other, just so you can get the differences down in your nervous system. Like, okay, now I'm doing my clinch, now I'm wrestling. You got to be able to separate the two. So the last thing, and probably the most important thing that I learned from this fight, is that it doesn't matter how experienced you are, just a little change in environment can throw you off. So what do I mean by this? The energy in an MMA fight versus a Muay Thai fight is a completely different thing. It's a completely different crowd, especially in Thailand. It's a different thing. So if you go to a Muay Thai fight in Thailand, everyone's super respectful. You got the Thai music. There's not really walkouts. Like, you go into a ring, obviously. Like, it's a lot of things. You go to an MMA fight, you don't have any of that Thai music. You've got someone in the little gloves in front of you. There's no kind of ceiling of the ring. You kind of look into someone's eyes and say, okay, we're here to fight. You hear so much more because there's no Thai music in the background. There's just a different intensity of stepping into a cage versus stepping into a ring. The way I like to describe it to people is Muay Thai is more of a game that you play, and MMA is more of a street fight. But in saying that, I believe in my next MMA fight, I'm not going to let that get to me. I believe I'm going to be a lot more kind of on the ball and kind of focused, and not let the change in environment affect my performance and affect the way that I see the fight. Because at the end of the fight, my heart rate was way higher than it should have been, and the fight was not as hard as some of the sessions. And that was definitely just an adrenaline dump of overthinking, and obviously being new to the sport, there are definitely things that I could have done mentally to be able to be more confident, and not even confident, just to be able to be more comfortable in the ring or in the cage. So there we go. There are some things that I learned from my amateur MMA debut. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure that you check out some of my other videos. There's going to be a lot of content coming in the next few months. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Check out my shit down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.